two-time Gold Derby editor Daniel Montgomery here with Maid composers Chris Stracey and Este Haim. This is actually the first TV series composing job for both of you. So first off, how did you two first come to work with each other?
Well, we have Stracey and I are lucky enough to be very close friends with a man by the name of Tobias Jesso Jr. And he's a connector of sorts, right, Stracey? I mean, he's a
facilitator.
Yeah, I think he is. And he's also like one of the most talented people I know. So when I got the call, the ask at least to compose for Maid, I'm self-aware enough to know where my strengths and weaknesses are. And I knew that I needed a collaborator to help me on this composing journey. And so the first call I made was to Tobias. And I told him about the project. He was like, oh, it sounds really cool. I really think you should meet my friend Stracey. And I was like, okay, like I trust Tobias implicitly. Taste he has. The man has taste.
Yeah.
And just an arsenal of just amazing people around him. And so I knew if Tobias loved Stracey, I knew I was gonna love Stracey. And then lo and behold, when we got together on our first play date, right?
Yeah.
We had our first play date, and our first play date also happened to be the first time we were composing together. It just felt really natural and easy. And it was almost like, it felt like a first play date. It was like Tobias came, we met at Stracey's house, and we started kind of just messing around with vibes, and I got on the drums, and it was like super organic. But then I think like 3 hours into our hang, Tobias was like, I'm going to let the kids play. I'm just going to let the kids, do their thing. It seems like they're getting along. I've done my job.
He left us
and then Stracey and I were kind of off to the races after that. It felt really like just natural. And I'm really lucky that, Tobias knows how to pick them, and Stracey's incredible and literally like a savant when it comes to instrumentation and melody, and he can play everything and hears things in a way that I haven't really encountered a lot within the industry. I mean, we both have such an affinity for world music, and so I think we definitely connected on that tip. And again, that's why he doesn't necessarily hear things from a Western perspective. I think both of us kind of run the gambit between Eastern and Western music, and like microtonal music. And so, it was really nice to meet someone like Stracey, who was really just kind of up for everything and had such a wealth of knowledge, to back it up.
And basically the whole series is told from the main character, Alex's point of view. How do you go about conveying such a subjective experience and mindset that she's going through over the course of the series into the music?
Speaking from a woman's experience, there were many times, I think, during the making of when Stracey and I were composing, where it can be a triggering series, right? The subject matter is very intense, and I happened to relate to it on a personal level and a deep level. Granted, my experiences were dissimilar and similar at the same time to Alice's experiences. They weren't exactly the same, but the feeling of emotional abuse, sometimes physical abuse, was really triggering for me. And there were times where I felt really overwhelmed, but I also knew that I had a job to do and I wanted to do the series justice. And so I think a lot of that also was separating myself from the experience of Alex and what she was going through, and really wanting to tell her story. But I'd be lying if I said that I didn't relate to a lot of the things that she was going through. Again, not to the extent that she did in any way, shape, or form, but more, I guess, some of the emotional stuff that she was going through was triggering for me at times. So yeah, we try to bring the emotion, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But we also didn't want to add heaviness to it either, you know? I think that the subject matter is already pretty heavy. And I think that Stray and I went into this not wanting to add to that. If anything, I think we wanted to maybe give somewhat of like a breath to the audience, you know?
Yeah,
And
I think also that there's a lot of through the depression and the anxiety and the whole world coming down on you, Alex also has like a real determination.
yeah,
And that
and
speaks to
resilience.
what Effie was talking about, you know, not going too heavy, because she is like, I'm gonna pull through this, you know, like can I do it? I don't know, because everything is so crazy, but having those things where it's like, you know, for instance, the driving theme, like having those little moments of musical like momentum that kind of propel it forward in a way where it's like, you know what, there maybe is a way through and out of this, you know. And that's something that probably any musician can relate to, because I haven't met a single one that hasn't suffered from like depression or anxiety or anything like that. But that idea of like, you know, having to like claw yourself out of your own head is probably one of the biggest things that I think we tried to convey with Alex's themes, you know. And yeah.
And what was it like working with and around kind of you know, the rest of the soundtrack, the songs that appear in the series, including some Haim needle drops? How much were you trying to kind of stay in that same you know, that same world as the rest of the soundtrack?
I mean, I think just naturally, I think our inclinations were kind of within that realm. I mean, obviously because there was Haim music. I mean, on my end of things, but I think that Stray and I did a lot of like trading back and forth of like, we would hear one of the needle drop songs and one of the songs like within the episode, and one of us would be like, oh man, like this kind of sounds like this. And then that would kind of send us on a journey to all these other almost like sound-alikes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that also just kind of got us into the momentum of what that sound was. But I don't know if it was a conscious thing. I think it was just more that we got excited.
Yeah, and I think that probably also, you know, bits of the needle drop definitely sort of, especially when they were trying to convey like part of, you know, there's moments when it's needle drop and it's like separate, but then there's moments when it's needle drop and it really is like, okay, this is a part of the character's life or persona. And so I think that we definitely gravitated towards, like with Alex, there's a lot of guitar, there's like sort of, you know, baritone guitar, but then when she goes into the shelter, that turns into like acoustic guitar that has like a real softness and tenderness, because we played it with a paintbrush and wiped it really close to make it like super intimate and sounding. And I think that, you know, having those familiarity having those sort of familiar instruments of guitar, then juxtaposed with those kind of microtonal pitch bendy things when things are getting a little uncomfortable, a little anxious. I think that kind of really helped us in the, you know, that's kind of what we got like out of the needle drop. Like so one sort of informed the other for us in a way, you know.
Yeah.
And both of you working as recording artists, of course, in addition to your work now composing. What were some of the biggest differences for both of you, like how just the process, the creative process on a series or a film is versus on, you know, the rest of your music?
I mean, I guess it's kind of, to me, I mean, it's more about there just being more cooks in the kitchen, I guess, with something like this. When you're, and I know Stray will agree, when you have a contained music, like an artist music project, you're kind of in a cave, you make the thing, you produce it, you master it, you mix it, and then you just kind of hand it over and you're like, this is what it is. I'm not changing it. This is what I want to say. This is the music that I want to make. And that's it. And you print it and it's sent and that's it. And like, there's like no two ways about it. But I think both Stray and I are also really good within with collaboration. I mean, I collaborate with my sisters. Stray's collaborated with many other artists. So there is also something kind of nice about, you know, having other people to kind of bounce like, okay, this is what we did. Are we on the right track? Which is kind of what it felt like for us. And then getting notes back. I mean, to me, it was like, we were just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and what, you know, we would want to do and the kind of music that we would want for the scene. And there were times where we hit the nail on the head, you know, and then there were times where we would, you know, not get it. Yeah, you know, we threw the spaghetti at the wall and like it didn't necessarily stick.
But that's all part of the collaboration because it's really interesting, like how people can interpret things differently, you know. And I think as well, one of the major differences is that, you know, when you're writing songs, you're trying to be right there, front and center of attention. This is the chorus. This is like, here's the riff, you know. But as we're writing music just to support a film, you have to step right back and at times be ignorable in a way.
Exactly.
And then at times creep in and nudge the audience ever so slightly. And so I think that was probably one of the biggest differences and one of the biggest learning curves for us, you know.
Yeah, it's hard for us artists, you know. We want to be front and center all the time. And then, you know, but it was super fun. And again, like a really great lesson in restraint. And I would be remiss. I mean, I'd be lying if I said that, you know, I'm not going to bring what I've learned within this process to our next record, for sure.
And are there scenes or sequences from the series that each of you is, you know, especially proud of, especially after like seeing it back, you know, the finished product?
Oh man, I love in episode 1 where Alex is at Regina's house for the first time and she's cleaning and it's like the almost like a
it's like kind of
Eagles of death metal or something.
Like hectic disco.
Yeah, hectic disco is probably the best way to describe it.
That's
I love that, you know.
I love almost the first thing that we did was the leaving Sean cue, which also comes back in Driving to the Ferry. It's basically the cue that it's Alex's, I'm getting out of here, boom, I'm in the car. That kind of cue that comes back in different forms. It was probably maybe because it's one of the first things that we did, but it's sentimental for me. I love that.
Yeah. That was so fun, Stray. I think sometimes we forget like how magical that first experience was and how it could have gone so sideways.
We didn't know that we had the job at that point. We just did this thing and
we didn't know.
Gave them a few scenes.
Yeah.
And then, we'll call you. And
exactly.
A week or maybe, I don't know how long later, you got the job.
And we got the job, So we must have done something, right?
Yeah.
And you know, now that you've had this experience on this series, and you've continued to work together, what have you kind of learned from this, and what are you hoping to kind of bring to distinguish your work on like future films and shows?
Oh man, I think we just want to have the opportunity to continue, right? I think we had so much fun on Maid, also on Cha Cha Real Smooth. I think we just had a lot of fun. And again, like we got to do this in the middle of the pandemic when, as artists, it's not like we really had a lot of options or creative outlets, really. Like I wasn't playing live at the time, and it was really hard to not be playing music for other people, but then to be in the studio and, you know, working on something that was so separate from my artist project with my sisters was such a breath of fresh air. And I think we had such a good experience on Maid that I think it propelled us into wanting to do this again and again and again and again and again. So yeah, I think that, you know, I think that we're excited for the future, and, you know, whoever wants to make a movie or have these, you know, an Australian and a you know, a girl from the Valley work on their movie or TV series, I think that, you know, we'd be honored.
Well, I want to congratulate you both on your work on Maid, on your artistry in general, your individual projects, and everything you've both got coming up. It's been a pleasure talking with you both about it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you.